Do we have Bill on Zoom yet?
Yep, I'm here.
Can we spotlight Bill so we can see him?
Can't win the screen share. He's done sharing the pop-up.
Okay. Okay, there he is on the bottom, as long as I can see who's on. Hi, Bill.
Hello.
All right, we will call to order this meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committee for December 3rd. Can we do the roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Nairo.
Here.
Alder Nairo. Alder Lorman.
Here.
Is Alder Jackson expected, or is he excused?
I've not heard from him one way or the other.
Okay, great. Thank you. Moving on to our first item, it's the approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? All right, hearing no corrections to the minutes of the November 19th, 2024 Finance and Personnel Committee meeting are accepted as drafted. Moving on to the audit of the bills. Bill, do you have anything to add?
No additions tonight, and you should have at your place the December 3rd bills as well as the November credit card report.
Yes, we do. Okay. All right. Can I get a motion, please,
I'll make a motion.
to approve the audit of the bills?
Approve the audit of the bills.
Great, thank you. I will second that. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the audit of the bills signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. And please note that Alder Jackson is here. Hello, Alder Jackson. All right, moving on to agreements and contracts. We have three. The first one is Amendment 1 to agreement with Veerbicker for revisions to final design for Franklin Avenue reconstruction. And this comes to us from the Public Works Committee.
Sure, as from Public Works, I'll move that we accept this.
Okay, we have a motion.
This is Alder Jackson. I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion. Do you want to share anything with us, Alder Lorman?
Nothing comes to mind. It was pretty straightforward review within Public Works. It was unanimously approved. And I think as the comments say, the money is there.
Okay, great. And I just want to be clear, the amendment to the agreement is for design work only. Correct?
Correct. Yep.
That's great. I'm glad to see raised crosswalks being considered. I hope they will be level with the sidewalk. And I hope we'll be able to afford the actual construction. Okay, any further discussion or questions about this agreement? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving amendment number 1 to agreement with Veerbicker for revisions to final design for Franklin Avenue reconstruction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The next one, I'll need a motion that is subject to attorney review and approval. It's the agreement with Elevate Energy for Energy Efficiency Navigator Project in 2025.
Sure, Lorman will make a motion for the agreement with Elevate Energy for Efficiency Navigator Program.
Subject to,
City Attorney approval.
thank you.
This is Jackson. I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? I just had a comment and a couple questions. Kelly, if you'd go to the podium, please. Thank you. First of all, thank you for highlighting the changed parts. It makes it so much easier to find what's different. On page 19 of the packet, the date of December 18th is included with a comment, I believe, asking if that should be the date. Do we know what the date will be? It's in, it's in,
Aye.
yeah, compensation and method of payment.
Yeah, I didn't know what date to put there, if it's when the contract's approved or if it would be January 1. Yeah, that was a question for Matt. That will be a question for Matt.
Okay. And I see it says the city provided the sub-recipient an ARPA grant. So that whole sentence, Matt, you'll check. Seems like it should be forward-looking, that the city will do something, but okay. That's the only question I had. Any further questions for Kelly or discussion? I'm glad that we'll be able to fund this. So thank you for all your work on it, Kelly. Okay, all those in favor of approving the agreement with Elevate Energy for Energy Efficiency Navigator Project in 2025, subject to city attorney review and approval, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to number 3. This one also is subject to city attorney review and approval. It's amended and restated agreement with Way Forward Resources for ARPA-funded housing and food security assistance.
Okay, Lorman will make a motion to accept this funding, subject to city attorney approval.
Okay, so,
This is Jackson. I'll second.
okay, so the motion is to to approve the amended and restated agreement with Way Forward? Okay. Subject to city attorney review and approval. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the amended and restated agreement with Way Forward Resources for ARPA-funded housing and food security assistance, subject to city attorney review and approval, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Okay, moving on to miscellaneous. This is a request for proposals for combined classification and compensation study and operational and organizational review. And Brian Walhopter, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. So what you have before you is a comprehensive request for proposal. This request for proposal is designed to be incremental, sequential, and the separate pieces of this instructional and each other. The city has never engaged in a comprehensive organizational and operational evaluation of city operations and city staffing against the demands and needs of our constituents and residents within the city. We have conducted 2 salary studies, one in 2014, 2015, collaborating with a number of other municipalities in the Madison area. We conducted our own in 2020 that was implemented in 2021. This would follow that pattern of a quintennial sequence of external consultant-led salary studies. We have a process for indexing our individual ranges and the entire classification schedule with internal years. So I think that we will be well stated against anything that comes back as far as the ranges. We will likely see some adjustments based on labor demand and needs across the Madison area that may move one position from a classification scale or salary range to another salary range. And we've seen that in every one of the different studies we've done previously. The structure of the compensation study would be to look at every one of our 80+ positions, have them individually evaluated with input from supervisors and employees. We would then anchor that with a comparative study of about 30 positions, where we'll draw feedback from the other municipalities. Up to 20 other municipalities across the region. That would then allow us to have a solid compensation and classification schedule that we would build off of. The plan is extremely broad. It would link to both our comprehensive plan and our strategic plan, synchronizing all of those with staffing in the future. It is, as I said, sequential and incremental. It's important that we complete and synchronize our current salary schedule and classification plan before we would move on to determine whether we are missing any other positions or capabilities across our staff. The previous staffing plan or 5-year plan that was advanced was developed in 2020, just prior to my arrival. It was internally developed and it did not take into account
regional variations or market variations. It was really very focused on internal need as presented by department heads and understood by the administrative staff at that point. I am open to take any questions on the plan.
Thank you for that. I'm really excited about this. I think especially since this is our first time doing the organizational one, and previous salary and classification and compensation studies have been internally done. I think this is a really good opportunity for us. And just so I understand correctly, the police department will be included even though they've done their own study.
Yeah, absolutely. The police department has done a couple of independent studies. The police department will be included in this. It's important that we have a single synchronized plan for all departments. Each department makes up its own unique puzzle piece in the fabric of the city, and individual evaluations are not particularly instructive or helpful for us to meet our overall needs.
Yep, I can see that. So I'm glad that it's like going to be comprehensive. I have other questions, but I'll see if either of my colleagues have any at this point.
Go ahead with yours and we'll see if you cover them all.
Okay. First question I have, Brian, is how will this, well, you mentioned that in the past, we've collaborated with other municipalities in Dane County, and you know the DCCVA is doing a compensation or a classification study, or the wage study for employees in, I think they said 35 benchmarked positions. So how will this work either benefit from or overlap with what DCCVA is doing?
So Middleton is participating in the DCVA study. That will be available as an instructional point, an informative point for all of the salary information. We will not use that as our primary reference, though. We will charge the consultant to reach out to a number of comparative cities and probably take a look at some private sector feedback for positions that would be relevant for that, public works type positions, where we have parity in the types of duties. We then will ask those municipalities submit their best estimate of comparative positions and comparative salaries for positions, and we'll provide our position descriptions and job descriptions along with the request so that they can determine where there is an appropriate match. Job titles are not necessarily always comparative or equal from one city to another. Previously, we've tried to contact about 20 cities. We typically will get somewhere between 65 and 75% of those municipalities returning feedback. The consultant will use that then to develop a statistical analysis of the entire grade plate. And then from that grade plate, we'll sort the positions based on our evaluation internally and externally into grades.
Okay, good. On page 74 of the packet, I noticed that it looks like there's only 1 month for bids to be submitted, and that's pretty common, but it does fall over the holidays. So I was wondering if there are time constraints that would prevent us from maybe giving them 6 weeks. I don't know. It just seems to me the holidays is such a busy time for everyone. People try to take off.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a tentative timeline when I put it together. I don't think that we are at risk if we push it out and it added an additional 2 weeks to every one of the times. We would want to know the classification and compensation information going into the budget cycle.
Yep.
So that if we have the ability to implement any of the recommended changes this year, vice deferring them to after a referendum, we could do so. The operational and organizational study that would follow then would come in later. We wouldn't be in the position probably to leverage significant amounts of that until we would know if we would need a levy or a referendum to do so.
Okay. Also on page 76, I noticed there's a reference to Appendix A, and I think it should be Appendix 6. That's just something that, because all the appendix sections are numbered, not lettered, so.
Yeah, I'll go back and correct that.
Okay. And then it says, I think it's on page 77, it mentions the selected proposers and that they would come in for an interview, I think. And I'm just wondering, is that intentionally proposers? Would there be more than one selected?
So previously, and I drafted this with the idea that it would follow much along the strategic plan, consultant selection. So we opened up a process. We solicited requests for proposal. There was an initial cut, and then we brought in 3 proposers to provide presentations to the council before the council selected a final. So my idea was to give the council the ability to make a determination on who they felt was going to provide the best answer to this incredibly detailed and exhaustive project.
Okay, good. And I liked that there's a reference to the operational efficiencies, and it does indicate that that includes identifying efficiencies that we could gain through the use of technology, which is another part of our strategic plan. So I really liked that. You answered that question. And then the public input and online survey. Will the successful bidder be the one to develop any surveys?
They will.
Okay. And then the January presentation, or what right now is a January presentation, that's for the proposers to come in and make their pitch basically to whoever is selected by staff will come in and give their pitch to the council?
Yes.
Okay.
And that can easily, you said you queried about pushing that back. We definitely could give the proposals more time. It's a big lift to figure out if they're able to do something this large.
Yep. Well, I was just going to mention January 28th came up as one of the potential dates, and that's a plan commission meeting night. So
Okay.
not a good one for this room at least. And I think that's all I had. Oh, I had one more, and that's on page 79. It says additional specifically focused guidance and parameters relating to the classification and compensation effort will be provided to the selected proposer at the time of project initiation. And that sounds to me like it's, just worded in such a way that it means we might have more to provide to you.
Absolutely. There is no way that I could put in the proposal every single one of the individual details that we'll want to discuss with the
Okay.
proposers.
Just checking. All right. That's all I had. Any further questions?
So last time we did something like this was about 5 years ago, you're saying, and
The first half we did 5 years ago. We did a classification and compensation study that took a look at our salary schedule and our classifications, resorted them, built out a new scale. We've never done the second half or even approached doing the second half before.
what did it cost back then roughly?
About $30,000.
30. Now it's maybe pushing 100.
Well, when we take a look at 100, we're talking about a very comprehensive, broad and detailed compensation and classification study. And then that study directly informing a even more exhaustive organizational operational study to take a look at needs across the city and staffing capability and capacity. The $100,000 mark really was my best guess, taking together a staffing study at about the same cost as the one we did 5 years ago, and about 70,000, which is the target that Fitchburg used for their operational and organizational study that will be very similar to what we're proposing.
Yeah, so just kind of looking ahead budget wise, we've already, this would have to be worked into a budget, and we've already done some nice staff allocations in this current budget. Do you have kind of a plan B in the back of your head on something like this? Say we don't make the $100,000 mark, but we want to proceed ahead with something, maybe a portion of this or a module of it?
Bill can address the funding for the
Sorry, Bill, I
proposal.
wasn't looking at the screen.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, thank you. plan for financing this would be through the use of surplus from 2024 carried over. We had presented some preliminary numbers earlier this fall. The plan is that we would update those numbers in January. So as proposals come back, give you a good idea of where that surplus is going to be. But we're anticipating that there would be enough funds to cover not only this, but some of the other things that we discussed during the budget process, such as some of the pruning or other one-time costs.
Thank you.
And as far as impact on staff, these things are always stressful on staff. I think that since I've lived through these several times in my life, and sometimes this type of thing is telling staff, oh, hey, we're now going to look at everything and make sure you're slotted in efficiently. Maybe we're going to mess with your title. Maybe we're going to mess with your pay. Maybe we're going to do a lot of things. What type of input will staff have on this?
So the process used previously and the process I envision any proposers to use would to provide a position analysis questionnaire. It is a very uniformly used tool by most of these types of consultants. It would take the job position, the job descriptions into account. It takes the current salary schedule into account, taking a look at both internal structure and comparative external structure. At that point, the supervisors would then go through that position analysis questionnaire, answering some very specific questions about supervisory duty, scope of duty, education requirements, experience requirements, knowledge, skills, and abilities. And then the employees will have some input. The consultant will then take all of that information, take a look at the current scale, take a look at the comparatives that are anchoring the overall structure, and then do the sorting and adjustment. As far as the salary and moving pay, we have never in an evaluation reduced anyone's pay. That's not something that would come out of this. It may adjust the positions or location on the scale. But the last time we did this, it moved some of the public works positions to a lower number on the scale, but that salary range was actually increased from the previous salary range. So there was no material effect, and there's some explanation that has to be done to employees that, that really has no effect. It's just a number for the structure. It has no impact on the salary. So all that communication will be a part of that process.
Okay, yeah, I just feel very strongly that, that type of communication is just important to staff, and assurances of, we're not going to mess with you. This is what organizations do, and this is what they need to do every 5 years or so, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Okay, good questions. Do you have any questions, Alder Jackson? All right. So what kind of motion do you need us to approve this RFP language?
I would be looking for a motion to recommend to council approval of the engagement for the RFP. Then I will make the adjustments to the RFP scheduling and the other corrections you recommended, and we'll get the RFP issued.
Okay.
Alder Lorman, would you like to do that? So move approve.
Sure, move approval for request for proposal for combined classification compensation study and operational and organizational review.
Okay.
Fiscal impact to be determined.
So we've got a motion.
Mrs. Jackson, I'll second that motion.
Okay, so this is a motion that if approved, voting in favor will send this draft RFP on to council later tonight for approval. And voting against it will not do that. Okay, so all those in favor of approving the request for proposals for combined classification and compensation study and operational and organizational review signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Our last item is an ordinance amending, thank you, Brian, is an ordinance amending sanitary sewer rates. This comes to us from the Public Works Committee.
Sure. We discussed this. These charges, Sean's back there. He can shake his head if I'm off base here, but these charges came through from MMSD. We don't really have too many other options other than to accept and move on. And so I guess in front of us would be just that, a motion for an ordinance amending the sanitary sewer rates, SU-154.
Thank you for that motion. Can I get a second?
This is Jackson. I'll second.
Thank you. All right. Discussion. I have a question for you, Sean, and then a note for my colleagues. When we take this to council, if we approve it, we'll need to waive the first reading or suspend the rules so that we can go straight to the second reading, just because timing wise, we need to get this done. So Sean, on page 92, it references the 2019 sewer rate study model. How often do we do a rate study?
I think our target had been to do that about every 5 years. We've just been updating the one that we had.
Okay. I'm just thinking with this being based on a rate study and now the stormwater utility basing its rates on rate studies, might be good to coordinate on when those take place so there's not too much going on in our public works department in 1 year.
Yeah, fortunately, they're different divisions.
Yep.
So different people are running that. But it's a solid point. There's a lot to track that's on these sort of longer time periods.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, great. Thank you. Any further questions for Sean? All right. Then all those in favor of approving an ordinance amending sanitary sewer rates signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.